Welcome to America's most livable city. Please ignore the invisibles with me. See, Pittsburgh, we built its economy, but we still lead the nation in black poverty. Welcome to America's most livable city. Just ignore the invisibles with me and state your business, cause here, the place you live in depends on your race and privilege.
Hey, welcome to What Black Pittsburgh Needs to Know. My name is Jasiri X. I'm co-founder and CEO of One Hood Media, and unfortunately I have to sit in for Dr. Cheryl Hall Russell today. She has COVID, so we want to keep her in our prayers and, you know, make sure she gets better. This was like the episode I definitely wanted her to be on, particularly just as she steps into her role in Planned Parenthood. We're going to hold it down for Dr. Russell. And we have our, well, let's start with you, Miracle. To my right, we have with us, Miracle is our Director of Advocacy and Policy at One Hood. Happy to be here.
Happy to be here. I know I cannot, fill the roles of Dr. Cheryl Hall Russell. Again, wishing her, healing wishes as she battles COVID-19.
Absolutely.
And congratulating her on her new role as board president of Planned Parenthood of Southwestern Pennsylvania. So, yes, this would have been the perfect time for her to talk, but I will try my best to
we'll
bring everything together.
Yes, and we're going to create that space. In 2 weeks, she'll be back. And to my left,
Dr. Jamil Bey.
Yes.
One Hood Media. UrbanKind Institute. And I ain't putting Cheryl's business out there. I'm just going to say she's out. Her privileged health business is her business.
That's true. That's true.
She posted on social media.
Oh, okay. I thought I messed
out
up.
there. She's on blast. She's coughing up her lungs and stuff.
Yeah. But good to have you, Dr. Bey. And then our special guest today. This brother has taken on speaking of big shoes to fill, right? Yes. The new president and CEO of Urban League of Greater Pittsburgh, my brother Carlos T. Carter.
Thanks for having me.
The T stands for what?
You better
Terrific.
call
All right. So thank you for being here. Just
a pleasure.
We normally start with the first 15. To me, obviously, the big news was, we knew it was coming, the overturning of Roe v. Wade. I would like to start with you, Miracle, just on initial reactions. I know you participated in the activation at the Women's March. Pittsburgh called. There was a lot of folks out there. There was a lot of powerful words shared. Folks like Summer Lee, hopefully our new Congressperson. Latasha Mays was there and said some powerful words as well. What was your initial reaction when this came down?
Like you said, we were aware that the decision was coming to overturn Roe. We weren't sure to what extent and when it was going to come down. And unfortunately, they decided to make it on Friday. So we couldn't enjoy our one last good weekend of normalcy. And it's kind of funny because Dr. Bey was talking about HIPAA, but HIPAA is derived out of this Roe v. Wade ruling that talks about privacy and medical decisions and not sharing information. And so a lot of things are really up in the air because the judges didn't just say that Roe v. Wade was wrongly decided. They basically put other parameters on abortion and abortion access as they sent it back to the states, talking about life beginning at fertilization and conception. And so these are really, really strong beliefs, and that's going to impact how medical providers are really able to operate. Some states already had laws on the books, and those laws were really meant to create cases so that people could get to the Supreme Court. So some laws are very, very draconian. So there are some laws that don't have any exceptions for abortion, so even including life of the mother, and some laws do have that provision. So we're going to see a bunch of states really be arguing it, and it's very unfortunate because of the way it was decided. And a lot of people have really taken umbrage with Justice Thomas, because he was like, not only is Roe bad, but all of these other social justice, social rights laws are bad, and we're going to possibly see a lot of erosion of civil liberties, private civil liberties, when it comes to what you do in your own home, how you access some medical care and if you're able to marry. So we're going to see a lot of things really changing in the next 6 months. So it's going to be very important that people pay attention and organize and really, really try to get their homes in order as they legally can, because we don't know what this means for gay families. We don't know what this means for people who've adopted, people who've traveled here, people who are immigrants who've married into the country. So there's a lot of stuff happening that we have to pay attention to. Even
contraception. I mean, it's so much on the table. How did you see that? I mean, you know, we talk a lot about, particularly from the political sphere, about, you know, all skin folk and kinfolk, and, you know, to see kind of Justice Thomas become the face of this, you know, even after, you know, every day it seems more information comes out about his wife being, you know, one of the people trying to overturn the election and all of these things going on. It seems like, you know, it's this push of, you know, these, you know, I call them, like, you know, you would say like white supremacist patriarchal force trying to instill like their beliefs on everybody else.
When you look at it, and you talked about the way this thing was decided, when I look at something like this and you hear the logic, the reasoning that, you know, Clarence, you know, used, and some of the, you know, the Constitution, in a lot of ways, it's like the Bible in the sense that I'm going to selectively pick an element that agrees with the point that I want to make right now. Damn the logic, damn the extension and its application to other things. And so, you know, if you believe that this is something that should be decided by states individually, and that states and and there's a majority of people in these states that sort of make up their legislation, and it applies to how they feel locally. If you accept that, and then you turn around and you say, but we're going to allow gerrymandering,
right,
and we're going to allow a minority population to dictate how states operate, then, you know, the two don't go together in the way that I would understand. And I also don't, 200 plus years ago, some folks got down and wrote a constitution based on some principles that made sense to them at the time. And now that's supposed to be the gospel that now dictates how we interpret, you know, everything forthcoming.
Right.
You know, so just the whole thing. But, you know, that's just philosophically, I'm looking at this and like, you're full of shit, man.
Correct.
You know, we're not buying it, and you shouldn't be selling it. But at the other, you know, like, I did not expect, you know, we didn't, like, how this came out this quickly, and then Clarence so quickly. Here's some other shit that we want to do.
Right.
That we're going to come after.
Except for, like, Loving versus Virginia, because then that would affect his personal life, right?
Right. That at the same time, all of these things that were decided at the state level, you're not ready to revisit that one, you know, as Samuel pointed out.
Absolutely.
But, you know, this is bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, point blank, period. And it looks like a power grab. So now, you know, Carlos, you're at the head of a pretty, you know, well-known, powerful organization in Pittsburgh that's done a lot in the community and has a strong constituency. So, like, is there a response, Urban League response? Do you have a personal response, or like, what is the next step? Is there kind of some national mobilization that you see happening?
Well, I'd say both. So I'll start with the National Urban League. Is very disappointed by this decision, pretty much sees it as an affront on women's rights. It can impact LGBTQ plus immigrants. We feel like it's far reaching. And so we actually, again, issued a press release. And so the National Urban League is not happy with the decision and doesn't support it at all. And really see it disproportionately impacting black women, as an affront on black women and other marginalized groups. That's pretty much in summary. So I don't know the specific efforts, but I'm sure the National Urban League is pretty vocal. But we just got that press release a few days ago about that. Now, personally, for me, of course, I would say this, like, nobody wants to get an abortion, right? I don't think it's something that anybody would say is really a good thing, but I think that I would encourage people to be on a perspective that people should have choice.
100%.
And so no matter what your opinion is, we know that, again, as I mentioned earlier, different groups are going to be impacted disproportionately. And even, I don't know exact data, but I know in New York, for example, someone told me, correct me if I'm wrong, that more black babies were aborted than born in New York City. I was really, I don't know if that's true. Someone told me that. I don't know where that
might have came from that Donald Trump.
Well, someone in my office told me that, so I don't know if that's true. But however, I know no matter what, that it's going to disproportionately impact our community. And we even think in terms of history, how different groups were like gone to places where they're getting these abortions that were dangerous and people died.
Right.
But I think more importantly, we do need to think about like even when people are born. So people, I am a Christian, but like people talk about loving unborn fetuses, but let's even have love for people who are born, right? And so we see a lot of
100%.
vitriol that is shown. And I like what Leon Ford said, his grandfather said, is that, I study many religions, but I practice love. And so I would like to see people having the love for people that are actually here as well. And sometimes I see some very mean-spirited behavior that doesn't reflect love.
Right. And I think that was one of the biggest, when you look at the commentary afterwards, right? You know what I'm saying? And a couple of things. One, it really comes down to like whose choice is it? Like, are you telling a woman that she doesn't have the ability to choose things that will affect her own physical body? You mentioned, in some cases it might be a situation where it could harm a woman, be harmful to the baby. You're saying like, or we saying, oh, you can allow a child to have a baby, but then once the baby comes forth, we're not going to have formula for the baby. We're not going to have health care, universal health care for the baby. We're not going to have child care for the baby. You're on your own. And it's kind of that idea. So that was one of the narratives that kind of came out of it, was like when you're unborn, you have so much support for him. Now the child is born, now we don't want to give any type of support for that child, which I think is also kind of wild when you watch it. And so, but another narrative that came out, and I want to come back to you, Carlos, was, and we heard this over and over again at the rally, where we got to vote, right? And I did want to mention, you also said like people are going to get abortions. Are they safe? Are they medically safe? You know what I'm saying? Like, are we taking that in mind? And what happens now when this comes down is you make it less safe for folks that want to occur this or do this medical treatment. But is voting the answer? Like, I know that you're talking about, that's one of the main things that the Urban League is looking into. It seems that, it's become harder for us to vote. But at the same time, it was a lot of energy around voting at the rallies. But then, President Biden wasn't necessarily, he didn't really, in my opinion, like come with anything that made me like energized. He was kind of like, oh, we're not going to add Supreme Court justice. We're not going to add filibusters. We're not going to. So what are we left with? Because we're in a situation, right, where we could have a governor in Pennsylvania. We have a majority Republican legislator in Pennsylvania, but we have a Democratic governor who basically said he's going to veto anything that could change in November. What message are you kind of giving, not only folks internally, but also the Pittsburgh community at large around voting?
Well, I think it is so important when I think about my grandparents in Selma, Alabama, who couldn't vote, right? People have to count jelly beans and things like that. And so from a historical perspective, I think with our folks being disenfranchised, I think voting is just so important. But when you think of the laws and who's appointed in different positions, it is impacted by who's in office. And so I think it is critical that we do understand that our voice does matter. And that we can't become apathetic, especially in these midterm elections, because they do impact policies that impact systems that a lot of times really rest heavily on the shoulders of Black and brown people and other marginalized communities. And so I would just encourage people to don't be discouraged. Voting isn't a panacea, but it's part of the process. And if you're not exercising your voice, you're part of the problem. And so I think we at the Urban League and others have to do a better job out letting people see how they can take this to giant eagle, right? Like putting it at the street level, why that's important with the messaging, and especially, for all age people, even, talking to, my young son, 20, like getting them to see that, sometimes they have a very jaded view, but letting them see that it does make a difference. It doesn't solve everything, but it's a key ingredient in creating change, since we know there are systems, and systems are impacted by legislation.
Absolutely.
And those who are in those places. And now it's become more important than ever, even in terms of, like you said, with dealing with abortion and other issues, who's in office does make a difference. Of course, we're nonpartisan, but we do have to make sure that we're voting for people who care about our communities and whose policies impact our families and communities in a positive way.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Is that
one
okay?
part of that we don't talk enough about when we talk about how important it is to vote. That if that's our first time getting politically active, then we're missing the point. That the opportunity now is where is the Black agenda? Like like you said, what are the issues that are important to me? Who are those candidates? So now we have 2 candidates, and neither one of them represented. So now I'm voting for the less evil.
Right.
No, who are the candidates that we know who are going to take our agenda and run with it, that understand these challenges, and how do we influence that part of the equation? I think that's, between elections, that's where we really need to, not just sit back and wait until November, between now and then and the next election. What are we doing to set the table?
Is this election becoming more heightened now, Miracle, because reproductive justice and rights are on the table?
No, because there's always something on the table.
True.
That we have to fight for. I think what we're seeing is that we need to have people in office who actually care and pay attention to the dog whistles and
right.
pay attention to when people say they're going to do things. Yes, a lot of us were shocked on Friday, but in 2016, Trump said this is what he was going to do.
Yeah, he did.
Mm-hmm. And what we had was a bunch of people said, oh, he probably can't do that.
Right.
No, the Supreme Courts won't do that. I asked them and they told me that they wouldn't do this.
Right.
And we're seeing that way of life, that politic, that moderate that MLK talked about is someone that we really cannot keep believing in and keep fighting for. We have to vote only because it's at this point harm reduction.
Right.
It's like, okay, now I got to make sure I don't die tomorrow, so let me go out and vote. But for some people, they're dying right now.
Right.
There are some people who don't have food and shelter and clothing right now.
Right.
There are some people who don't have medical support and care right now, and telling them, well, in November, if you vote for me, it'll be okay when I get sworn in January, isn't the message that they need to see. So we need people who are elected in office to do things now that they can do, to put up the policies, to fight for the support. We're in budget hearings right now in Pennsylvania, and they're arguing about whether or not people can get money who are elderly. If we can just give elderly folks money
right.
So they can live from day to day. And this is one of the things that people are getting very frustrated with and say, you know what, I'm going to turn away from voting because it's not making my life any better. And so what we have to see is people who we elect actually changing. And then also we have to create those opportunities for our lives to go and talk to people and advocate. Because yes, the politicians need to have an agenda, but we also need to have an agenda that we're pushing. But that's privilege, because if you're someone who's working and taking care of a family and maybe working 2 and 3 jobs, to sit down and write out a 10-point plan may not be in your list of priorities, but that's something that has to be done so we can keep pushing and making sure we have a reflective democracy that's working for all of us.
So I have a question for you. I have 2 questions, right? One is just for you, and then one, hopefully, we'll open it up. And just as you know, as a lawyer, you're a lawyer. I thought Congress person Ilhan Omar laid out a great kind of foundation on Twitter, I thought, for possibly expanding the Supreme Court. Right? She talked about 2 judges have sexual assault charges that are pretty much confirmed. She talked about how they kind of lied, even about Roe v. Wade, how all of them came and said, no, we're not going to overturn that, and they end up doing it. Is that something that you think is that Democrats should be pushing for?
Absolutely not. You're just going to get more of the same, right?
You're just going to get more.
What they should be pushing for is impeachment of these justices. They lied. They perjured themselves.
Yes.
They under oath swore that this was settled law and they would not overturn it, and they did. That's how you fight. And that you have,
Absolutely.
if people are doing things that they have lied about and you've gotten more information, you go back and investigate, you impeach them, you take them off the court. That's what needs to be done. We keep trying to do this Monday and Tuesday night quarterbacking.
Sure.
You're just going to get more of the same.
Yeah.
And then we're going to, right now we have 9 justices, and in 20 years we'll have 45 justices, and they'll still be ruling the same way.
Sure.
What you have to do is say, you know what? This is about our integrity. This is about the fact that you said this under oath. You can change whatever you want to change, but you lied under oath to get here.
Yeah.
You can't do that. And that's what you could do. Do an investigation. Look and see what people were promised. Look and see if in fact this draft opinion really was sent to conservative organizations so they knew what was coming, because that shows that this was not something that was based on law, was based on personal connections and political reasons. Do those type of investigations.
Yeah.
But I'd also say leave tribal lands alone. If you cannot get tribal folks water and schools and adequate care and housing, don't try to go and recolonize their lands for abortions because the people you elected failed you. So that's what I would say. But no, I'm not on the stacking of the court because you're just going to get more of the same. And if you're not going to change your questions.
You changed my mind. I mean, you broke that down. So one other question, and you know, it was a couple other rulings. I know one was around Miranda rights, and they took away the ability to sue a police officer who doesn't use the Miranda rights. But another one was around gun control laws. This one specifically around New York City, who has restrictive gun control laws, but also, like many places, it's an uptick in violence and gun violence in a lot of these places. This ruling basically would make it easier for folks to get and carry guns in New York City. Can you talk a little bit about that as we kind of begin to talk about like how, you know, we're like many cities are trying to figure out, you know, how to make this a safer summer for our children. It looks like this ruling makes it more difficult.
Yes, so New York had very restrictive requirements to meet and get a conceal and carry license. New York has very strict gun laws, just in general, and the Supreme Court was like, no, you can't do that. You can't do additional tests. People have a right to conceal and carry. And it was very interesting. They also said you had a right to defend yourself outside of your home, and that's why you need access to a firearm. And so the question now becomes, do all of the people who've been arrested due to these laws come home? Do they get their records expunged? Like, what is the next steps? That hasn't really been a thing. But there is a conversation about how do we have public safety and expansive gun laws, knowing that most of the people who have gun restrictions are predominantly Black men. And so a lot of people have been advocating for, you know, social investments, affordable, you know, housing, stabilizing people's social conditions and working with their mental health. And that's how you stop violence. Again, we're not there yet. So yes, if we're going to have people who are traumatized, angry, upset, left out, now with easier access to guns, we're going to see crime increase, but then you're also going to see incarceration increase. And that seems to be where a lot of people have their funding is incarceration and keeping that cycle going.
True. I know that was one of the things we talked about when we met earlier, Carlos, was, you know, how do we begin to deal with like the violence in our community? We are a place that has like pretty, I guess you would say, liberal, you know, it's
gun laws,
kind of easy to get, kind of easy to kind of get concealed carry. But also I remember being at an event in Homewood, and I think I talked about this before, where there were Black people carrying guns, and the police got nervous, and it was like, but they're within the law, like they're not doing anything. Like, why would you then, if this was a group of white people with guns, like would you be looking at it in the same way? Is there an approach that you're looking at in terms of violence prevention as you stepping into this role? I know you've done mentorship before. You know, you're somebody that's been, you know, you didn't just come up and just join early. You have a pretty extensive history of community work. So can you talk a little bit about?
Well, first thing I'll say to address that situation where you said Black people with guns were perceived differently. Well, we know the bias is the footprint of societal norms on our brains. And so I think that's a manifestation of that Black people are seen more dangerous, right? Black youth are not seen as innocent. We do know those things. But in terms of dealing with violence in the community, I think you also have to look at inequity, right? And you have to look at poverty. You know, I was reading an article, I think in the Courier, where it talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But a lot of times when people's basic needs aren't met, you can't focus on self-actualization or, you know, realizing your full potential if you're hungry, if you're not safe. And so those things that exist because of structural racism and barriers, that begets violence, in my opinion. And so you have to address that too. Yes, we have to address mental health. yes, we have to give our young people a sense of hope. When people are in poverty, a lot of times they don't have a sense of hope. And I think that breaks down the families as well. So it's not one thing. I think it's many things.
Right.
But you can't dismiss the economic part of it. And you think of the Urban League, our Center for Economic Self-Reliance, where we're trying to move Black people and other marginalized communities from unemployment, underemployment to economic self-sufficiency. We're focusing on Northside, Homewood, and some other communities, Duquesne, and a few others. And that's important, that people have living wages and that Black people aren't just struggling, but they're thriving. And I think that's part of it, the inequity of the oppression of poverty. And I think that you can't ignore economics, in my opinion.
Right, and that's been your approach as well at UrbanKind and the work that you all are doing,
Right.
Dr. Bey.
The violence is a symptom of so many of these other things that didn't go right. And when we think about, some new efforts that we're taking on, when we're thinking, predictors are not necessarily determinants. And we can predict because we know that, young folks who grow up without, secure housing, without, regular access to food, without mentors and relationships with, caring adults, those are predictors. But they're not necessarily determinants. So how do we think about, working with these young folks and giving them those things in another form? Okay, your mother and your father should be there and the school should provide that and folks should have decent jobs, but that's not the case in so many of these. So how do we think about building these relationships and providing young people with those kinds of foundations and supports so that that's not an issue? How do we keep them, what we're calling future focused on their goals and with a plan and a path to get there? And as long as we're able to, successfully do that, we would expect better outcomes. And so, that's sort of, the way we're, building a model that we can share with other organizations as an approach to do this and do it at scale, because it's not going to matter if it only happens in one neighborhood.
One thing I have to jump in with, I forgot to mention, our Black Male Leadership Development Institute and Black Female Development Leadership Institutes as well. My son actually went through the one program, and it's important because it's the programs build upon the strengths of the young people as look at their deficits, but building upon their strengths as leaders and helping them make a greater impact in our community, connecting them to mentors, listening to them, helping them to be civically engaged, and so the program has been around since, I think, 2007. And so we're starting our cohort in partnership with Robert Morris. So if you go to our website, ulpgh.org, and go under youth programs, and please register. We need volunteers, but that's a great program that's had proven success.
And that's starting shortly.
Yes. Yep. Actually, I think the second week of July, so we need people to, and the female one starts up in August, I believe.
Okay.
Great programs. I'm a witness for my own son. I watch how he really took off, and the data shows, right, when you're really connected with strong Black mentors and forces that, right. I tell our young people, we're more than what we see on the news, right? When we can really allow them to illuminate who they really are, when we really know who we are, and who we are transcends being enslaved. And people think when people enslaved Africans came over, they were dumb. They were not. I was in New Orleans recently and saw some of the brilliance. When you look in Jackson Square, the white folks didn't know what the Sankofa was. You look in Jackson Square, there's Sankofa everywhere. These were skilled craftspeople. And so these people were brought here because they were talented, not because they were savages. And so we believe the lies, and we have the internalized racism, right, where we believe in that looking glass self, where we reflect and we sometimes live out what others have projected on us. But we need to unlearn those lies and realize our true value. And I always tell people, not only are we athletic freaks of nature, we're intellectual freaks of nature. And so when we know our values, we're not going to treat ourselves, when people make us think we're Cupid's cone, and no, we're diamonds, baby.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure.
Yes.
I did want to come back to you because I know one of the things that the Urban League also focuses on is housing, right?
Yes.
And, we're in this city, Pittsburgh. I saw, a tweet from the former mayor almost said something. I kind of just kept it moving about Pittsburgh, one of the best places to buy a new house, and it's like, we understand that the subtitle of that is if you're white,
right.
Because of the racial buying gap when it comes to housing. I know you talked about the Urban League has been addressing that and has programs to address it. Can you just talk a little bit about, because housing is a conversation that we've had a lot on this program. What are some of the ways that you're helping folks, get into home ownership and developing themselves in a different path?
The first part, I think, is helping people to reach economic self-sufficiency and again, connecting them and providing opportunities, not just only in the Urban League, but also other places, because we don't care who gets the credit through our Opportunity Broker program. We just want to get people, remove barriers, like if they need assistance with child care, books, things like that. And so we could connect them to other places too. But
So to get into that program, is that the same thing? You just go on the website? And
yeah,
you
they
just
go through our website.
Y'all want some economic self-sufficiency? Like, what's the process?
Well, I would say, I know we're trying to streamline some things. For right now, I would say to go to our website under info and just say I'm interested in learning more about the Center for Economic Self-Reliance. We don't have a leader for that program. We desperately want the right person.
Gotcha.
But we do have opportunity brokers. We just hired a new one. We have room for more. But I think that's part of it. We also have our home ownership workshops we have to teach people. But again, people can learn about buying a home, but they still need to have the resources to afford it, right?
Yeah.
So I have my home owner.
That down payment.
Yeah,
right?
my home owner certificate, but can I afford a home, right? And so people need to get to that portion, that position. We also have resources to help people if they're struggling with rent payments or mortgage payments and things of that nature. But resources are limited and the needs are great, but it is important that we do rise the boats through education and opportunities, because I was the first in my family to buy a home. So a lot of these things for me, like I've experienced poverty myself. I don't have all the answers. So I was the first in my whole family to buy a home. It was a big deal. At 24 years old, I bought my home. But I feel like, and actually I got a referral from the Urban League that got me connected to the banking world,
Wow.
that got me in a higher income, which is ironic. Yeah, it's helped 3 generations of my family, my
It's
mom,
like a 360
my son, and me.
return.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. You don't get that with CEOs pretty often. So this is serious to me. It's not, that I've not experienced it. And so I'm very sensitive and very passionate for that reason. But I've seen how things can change when you get education, when you get opportunities, when you have the right connections. No matter what color the person is, somebody willing to help to get you where you want to be. But, our people sometimes perish because of lack of vision and support. So when you're in survival mode, we've been in survival mode too long for obvious reasons. So we need to provide support so that we're not in survival mode. But it starts up here too, and so I want to see our people thrive. I want to see all people thrive, but I have a big heart for Black people because I know personally how we struggle. But, we help all people at the Urban League, and I do personally, but I want us to move from surviving to thriving. It's going on for too long.
Absolutely. Do you all have any questions? I want to jump in.
Oh yeah. Also, in addition to doing Urban League, you are an author.
That is right. Yes. I always forget about that.
So, can you talk a little bit about why you decided you want to tell your story? Because you're talking about buying a home at 24, overcoming poverty. That's a lot.
Yes.
And you're from Pittsburgh.
I am. Yes, I grew up partly in Duquesne, partly in Wilkinsburg, Homewood area.
Right.
Yeah, and went to school here, everywhere. So yeah, some people don't believe it, but yeah, I grew up right here in Pittsburgh. But there are a lot of great people in Pittsburgh. So I'm
Absolutely.
one who gets more of the spotlight now. But there are people who are probably better than me, right, and who haven't had the opportunities. And I wrote the book because
So tell us
okay.
what's the book called?
Okay,
break it down for us,
Okay,
brother.
the book is called Greatness Awaits You.
Okay.
23 Ways to Unlock the Greatness Within. And so May did my picture, which
Okay.
is cool. I had all these crazy ideas, and May said, "You're over the top." I said, "When May tells you over the top, that's bad." I said, "How dare he tell me I'm over the top?" But his idea actually was a great idea, and it was brilliant, and people love it. I feel like the picture he did is iconic. That could be in a museum, that he created. I thought was pretty cool. But yeah, so the book is about really discovering your value, passion, and purpose, and really overcoming obstacles to really fully realize yourself, and when I look at success, it's not about what you drive, it's what's driving you. And so really figuring out what's important to you. And people like my book because they say they help people like the Soul Pit like my book, Public Source. People have told me they hate self-help books, but they like my book. They said it's not preachy, it's real, it's vulnerable. People are shocked how open I am about my life. But I think, I could have easily written a great book where I was more superficial, but that's not Carlos, and it's not that I'm never fearful, but I believe that, as Nelson Mandela said, courage isn't the absence of fear, but the triumph over. So every day I'm triumphing over fear because I feel like, there's a sense of urgency. We talk about standing on the shoulders of giants, but we're all giants, right? We have the courage to tell your story and persevere and be authentic. And so I do it because it's not about me. It's about empowering people to discover their value, passion, and purpose, and a greatness within, become better people and better leaders. So somebody reads my book, if someone, gave them a sense of having low self-esteem, they will question that. And people, the reviews on Amazon have said it's life-changing. People said it's roadmap for success. that one lady told me she ran a marathon because she read the book, and
wow.
that's what it's about. And I'm a blogger as well, so I had gone viral internationally a couple of times. So people always ask me to write a book. So every Monday I put out something. The day I put out, I need some respect, and my quote was, "When you get respect at home, you have it all." And I talk about how it's important for me to get respect from my 3 sons, which isn't easy. And so the fact that they respect me is important, because many of us, we can post on social media, we can act a certain way at work. But one thing about me, whether people like me or not, Carlos is real. My wife gets embarrassed sometimes. I say, but you didn't have to put a ring on it, but you did, right? She hates when I say that. But from the church, the street, at work, I'm real. And so sometimes people may want me to be this person, but I am me, right? Yeah. And I thank God for the courage to be my authentic self, because it takes courage to be your authentic self. So I want to empower others to say, look what Carlos went through, all these things, but guess what? He made it, and guess what? I can do it too, because I don't want people to just look at the exterior and say, oh, it's got a decent clothes on, and but no, to say, like, I'm like Drake, I started from the bottom, now I'm here, and so you can be there too, and I want to help you get there.
No, that's powerful. Dr. Bey?
When we last spoke, you said somebody had gotten the book on Barack's desk.
Oh, yeah, that is true.
Did you hear back from Barack?
I have not heard back, but it's on his desk. This was some months ago. But like me, sometimes I have books, but he would love my book because I've read things about him. And some people compare me to him a lot, which is funny. But I think he would like my book because it's real, right? I think people like when things are real. And everybody says, wow, I can't believe how open you are. But, hey, we need to be real, and that lets people know when they see our testimony, like me not meeting my father till later, but then how it turned into a beautiful story and all of that. And so I think, people will be blessed by reading it. And when I read the reviews, I'm like, man, yes, this is exactly what I wanted. And so I feel like people are responding exactly the way I wanted them to.
Well, I mean, I think it's powerful because, like you said, somebody may look at you now and think that you had a different upbringing, right?
Exactly.
Just based on how you look, what schools you went to. So somebody might think, oh, this brother came from, this private area, whatever. And to tell you, it's like, nah, I
lived in the projects for 9 years before in Duquesne, except for I was proper hood. So, so like,
code switching, right?
Mother, can you please give me the government cheese?
Yeah.
But to bring it full circle, that's the work that we have to do.
Yes.
These are predictors. So this brother grew up in Duquesne. It's back and forth, Duquesne, Wilkinsburg, Homewood. So now there's another element that he's transient.
Right.
That's another knock against you. In the projects, okay, the outcome for you, the outlook for you would have been, this brother is going to be in trouble. And so when we talk about anti-violence, when we talk about interventions, when we talk about building and working with young people,
yes,
what were those things that helped, hey, this brother's on a different path? What kept you future-oriented and goal-oriented?
Well, it's funny you mention that. So even though, I was poor, I didn't really know it at first. And so the key thing, I think my mom did a great job. She faced many challenges herself, but she wanted her kids to be different, And so even when I was on a project, I told my mom, I want to be president of the United States. I told my mother that. And it's funny. And so she always told me, you can do anything. And so despite what challenges I faced, I always believed that things would be better. So I had that hope. And so I think that was my guiding star. And I think that was a big thing. And also her telling me, don't be a follower, be a leader. And so those little things, I think, really made a difference for me. And in believing in myself. I'm not saying I never doubted in myself or I never struggled with my self-esteem, but I always knew that I was somebody. And even being a dark-skinned person, and before Michael Jordan, dark-skinned wasn't in, right? My mom's a very pretty lady, and they were like, so your mom's beautiful to be dark-skinned. You shouldn't even need that qualifier. I talk about it in my book, too. That's, again, internalized racism. But we're basically taking and projecting what was taught to us by slave masters, right? And we need to jettison that. But I think really knowing who I am, believing in myself, willing to stand alone, is important, because when you're trying to, even as an adult, there's adult peer pressure, right?
True.
It's a lot. Even, as a leader of the Urban League, again, people have expectations of who I am. But, when I interviewed, I never competed for the job. They came after me. I just showed them who I was. I told them I was never sure I was going to take the job because I knew it would be a big task. I didn't take it for fame or the highlights. I could care less about that. I told the employees, when I take my last breath, I'm not going to say, was I president? I'm going to say, did I make a difference?
100%.
That I leave people in places better than I found them. That's what motivates Carlos.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, a title is just that, a title, but
it means nothing
and
to me.
I think it kind of goes back to both your point, Dr. Bey, and your point, Miracle, about who's in these seats, right? I mean, it's one thing to say this person has this role or this person is in this office, but what type of person are we putting? Are we putting somebody in there that's gonna that knows about our issues, that knows about our struggle, but then also that's willing to fight, for us as that tide comes and that pressure comes to not support our community, or that money comes and lobbyists come and want you to do something else. Like, are you willing to maintain and fight for us and what's right? And I think that's, to me, I think that's kind of like this moment that we're in right now. And it's really showing, as things become more divisive, as the pressure ratchets it up, as things become more urgent, it's really showing, okay, like, who's really about doing this work? Because at the end of the day, like, the work comes before, any type of accolades or things come with that. Any, I think we're getting close to the end. Any final comments, final words, some hope maybe? Miracle, you have some hope for?
Yes, I'll try to leave y'all.
With her name, she has to have.
Yeah, come on,
name is very
Miracle.
helpful, right?
Keep hope alive.
Keep hope alive, but a shameless plug. If you're watching this Tuesday, tonight at 6 p.m., I'll be at the Heinz History Center talking to Annie Pearl Avery. She was a leader in the voting rights movement, the voting rights struggle, marched on the bridge, led SNCC. And so if you want to talk to someone who's going to give you some inspiration to learn how to go through trying times, come see us tonight at the Heinz History Center. And
that's free.
And it's free. And it's also virtual. So if you don't want to come in person, you can always go online. And yes, these are trying times, but like Carlos said, this is how we get our diamonds. This is the pressure. So this is how you find your community, find the talent that you have.
Shine bright like a diamond.
And find the ways that you're able to contribute. My favorite quote is, bloom where you're planted. So find the things that you're able, and the tools that you have now, and you're able to use to make a difference. So that is the hope. Absolutely.
No, that was good. And we this weekend we were able to, kind of celebrate, although it was late, the inauguration of Mayor Gainey. That was a dope event. It was a lot of folks that I hadn't seen in a long time. It was good to see our kind of community come together in that celebration. What are your words of encouragement for us, Dr. Bey?
Connecting and building on that, the thing that makes me hopeful right now is that there are some good things happening. And we can't let up. We can't sit back and say, okay, we're there.
Right.
Let's keep the foot on the gas. Let's keep moving. Stay organized. Make it happen. Let's set a Black agenda. Let's support an agenda. Let's get the candidates that we want to vote for, that inspire us to vote.
Right.
So that we're not voting against. We're voting for. And I think now's the time. There's just so many good things happening if we keep these pieces together.
No, you're right. And it's like, what happens when we build like an infrastructure to where the next young person that says, I want to be president, it's like, well, we have this infrastructure right here that shows you like how to become not just a politician, but somebody that's really going to take the issues and concerns and care of our community and turn them into policies that really matter to us. I think that creating that infrastructure of like, this is how we move as a Black community, I think that's a powerful thing that needs to be worked on. What are your final words of inspiration, brother? Just get your book and then
on Amazon, Carlos C. Carter, Greatness Away Too. And so I will say, it can be overwhelming when you see all the negative things that are happening.
True.
But when you think about our ancestors, what they went through for 246, almost 250 years of being enslaved, 100 years of Jim Crow, and even some things we still face today. We're free-ish, as they say.
100%.
But that we are the hope and prayers, answered prayers of our ancestors. Even the fact of us being here speaking now is something they couldn't do. And so celebrating that don't mean we stop there, but know that I'll give you a quote from Eddie Jaku, who's an Auschwitz survivor. He says, there's always miracles, even when we can't see them. And even when you don't see miracles, no matter how dark it is, that we can be that miracle by helping someone else. And the greatest miracle is uplifting others.
Absolutely.
And so that we have to be encouraged. We can't give up. When our folks were toiling and fighting, going through everything, children being snatched, all types of things, they kept a hope for the future and to know that we are that future.
Absolutely.
And that we can create, the future is now, and we can create the future we want. But we got to be vigilant. We have to fight hard. We have to vote. We have to have a set agenda. We have to be relentless, and we have to not, some people want Black people to settle for crumbs. No, baby, I want the whole
100%.
loaf of bread. Hello.
100%.
And
no, I mean, that's a great point.
Yeah,
we want it all. We want it all. No, great points. I mean, I think, you all said it best. And then just to say for folks that, like you said, it has been a lot of, some of the news stories and different things that come out can be triggering, right? And
Right,
so
absolutely.
it's okay for folks if
Yes,
folks want to
absolutely.
take a self-care day.
Yes.
If folks just want to kind of, like it's okay. Like, cause sometimes I think like we gotta, like you said, like, damn, it's Friday. We can't even go out and hang out, but we hung out, we went and protested, and then we kind of hung out and did our thing. We had an R&B showcase at One Hood that was like right after the protest. So
Nice.
we tried to do both, but if folks need that, self-care, need to take that time, feel free to do so. We're actually doing an engagement this week, this Friday, at Liberty Green Park. This is a park that is, right down the street from where we live. We know it's a lot of young people go to that park. And so we just want to, meet the youth where they're at. And if they're going to that park, we want to come there with music, with food, with entertainment, with things for the young people to do. So if you want to join us, we'll be in Liberty Green Park this Friday, probably around, supposed to be hot. So 6 maybe, what I'm saying? We try to let the sun go down a little bit so we don't melt out there. But, that's something that we intend to do kind of regularly this summer. And, anything we got, of course, we got a lot to talk about this week of white supremacy on Wednesday. So, tune in for that. And, I think that's about it. That's it?
Do you want to sing us out?
Brother got
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as a rolling sea.
All right, you didn't know. I told the brother he had podcast pipes. I didn't know. I didn't know those podcast pipes extended to that. Well, thank you, Brother Carlos, for joining us on What Black Pittsburgh Needs to Know. Again, sending healing love out to Dr. Cheryl Hall Russell. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Till next time. Peace.
Okay, I said it right.
No, you did. You was right. You was gonna keep going.
Welcome to America's most livable city. Please ignore the invisibles with me. See, Pittsburgh, we built its economy, but we still lead the nation in black poverty. Welcome to America's most livable city. Just ignore the invisibles with me and state your business, cause here, the place you live in.